This is Cinders and Ashes, Chapter 1, Book 1. Finn Ashton dug his fingers into the raw earth of his mother's ancestral estate as he prepared to mix his fey magic with the life in the soil. Winter had finally released its cold grasp on the land, and the light touch of spring had come to Tanglewood Manor. But things were not as they should have been. The land looked and felt dead, not just slumbering after a bitter winter, but barren, stripped, and empty. Finn's heart clenched. The winter was hard, harder than ever, but it's spring now, Finn thought desperately. Life should be returning. Yet the sweet scent of growing things did not tinge the wind. There was no birdsong. The tiny field mice that normally could be seen hopping through the grass, looking for seed, were not there. The appearance of the earth itself was wrong. This was not the rich, dark soil that Finn remembered from his childhood, or even the light brown stuff from last year. It was gray and powdery instead, desiccated. Every year, the crops have been pitiful, and many have gone hungry. But this year is so much worse. What if the land produces nothing at all? Finn thought as his despair deepened. Will we have to leave Tanglewood? Leave Dawnmore? Leave the Raythe kingdom altogether? Finn's stomach, which had felt like an empty sack all winter from eating nothing but thin potato soup, suddenly felt emptier. He and the other servants had survived more on hope than food. Hope that when spring came around, that there would be sweet berries to pick off the bushes, golden wheat to be milled into flour for bread, carrots and cabbages for soups and stews, and the rare wild game to roast over the fire. But what he was seeing before him was desolation. How can I fix this? Finn stared down at his hands that were limned with golden light, his fey magic made manifest. He then looked at the sterile ground. Can anyone fix this? In times past, the estate had flourished. Perhaps flourished was too strong a word, but it had produced enough to keep them all fed, the fires lit, and a roof over their heads, even with his stepfather and stepbrother's taste for luxury. This year, there would be no luxuries. In fact, this year, his stepfamily might also go hungry. But they would never accept such a fate, and anyone who did not help them escape it would pay. Finn's gaze slid to the three men who surrounded his kneeling form, his two stepbrothers, Miles and Christopher, and his stepfather, Lord Gerard Stewart, formed a triangle around him. Their clothes, all beautifully tailored and made of silk, velvet, and polished leather of the highest quality, were in sharp contrast to his own threadbare tunic, skimpy pants that now stopped mid-calf instead of at the ankle as he had outgrown them years ago, and shoes that had more holes than leather on the soles. Are you doing anything, Finn? Or just stalling to get out of your chores? Miles asked in a snide tone with a sniff tacked on at the end. Finn kept his head down, but his gaze cut to Miles. His stepbrother was fox-faced, all narrow-angled and suspicious sharp gray eyes. He was the youngest of Finn's two stepbrothers at 23 and thought himself quite the catch. He wasn't. Miles took out a dainty linen handkerchief and blew his beak-like nose with it. He then inspected the contents before tucking it back in his velvet waistcoat. Finn's stomach clenched again at the thought that he would have to fish that out and wash it later. Last year, it did not take this long, Finn. I thought you would get better at this with age. Or perhaps you are shirking your duties, as Miles suggests, Christopher replied dryly as he buffed the nails of his right hand against his crimson silk tunic. Christopher was 25 years old and arguably handsome, with his patrician nose, strong jaw, and sweep of dark blonde hair. But there was something unpleasant about him that repelled. Perhaps his lips were too narrow, or his gray eyes were too deep-set. Or maybe it was the coldness of his expression. Whatever it was, most people gave Christopher a wide berth. No, boys. his stepfather murmured in his deep baritone voice. It was a voice that he had cultivated for years to obscure his humble beginnings. He was a big man, finely made, and looked the part of a lord with his thick dark hair with frost at the temples, neatly trimmed beard, and proud bearing. But it was all fake. He had been born to a merchant, and he had grown his father's business to create modest wealth. Wealth he'd spent long ago, and now was squeezing Tanglewood for all it was worth. Finn has never disappointed us before. He understands our generosity in not turning him over to the king's guard. He will do his utmost to make sure the estate prospers. Won't you, Finn? Finn froze at the familiar threat. His stepfather's tone was friendly, not menacing, but that made it somehow worse. He was at his stepfamily's mercy. If he couldn't make the land fertile, they would reveal to King Rohan that his father was a fae, and all fae, full-blooded or not, caught on this side of the wall were executed. They were believed to be spies for the Eclipse throne. The irony was that Finn didn't have any loyalty to the magical beings beyond the wall. He hadn't even known he had any fae blood at all until his mother's death when he was 5. In his grief, his fae magic had exploded out of him then, revealing a secret he hadn't known he'd had. I don't even know my father's name, but King Rohan would still think I have loyalty to the people who abandoned me and my mother here, Finn thought bitterly. Finn? There was a warning note in his stepfather's voice, as he had evidently taken too long to answer. Finn stammered out, No, sir, I won't fail you, it's just... Just what? His stepfather asked as his booted feet suddenly appeared in Finn's vision. Despite Finn using fae magic, his stepfather had chosen to draw near. Was it to show how little he feared Finn? To establish dominance? To threaten? Probably all of the above. Other than the golden glow around his hands, Finn looked completely human. He did not have the pointed ears, the crimson eyes, or the preternatural beauty of his father's people. At least, he didn't think he had the latter. Before starvation had cut him down to skin and bones, there were those who had found him handsome, if not beautiful. Even now, he drew unwanted attention for his elfin looks. But he was sure that the fact he looked human allowed his stepfather to not associate him with the fearsome battle mages of the Eclipse throne. Just what? Spit it out, boy, his stepfather growled. It's just... life in the land is weaker this year than before, Finn tried to explain. So much weaker. His stepfather shrugged his broad shoulders. And? Your magic will quicken it and make the estate bloom like it always has. Finn wet his lips. Gainsaying his stepfather was never wise. But he had to this time. He had to set their expectations lower than ever before. Even though the magic within him grew each year, if there was no life in the land to quicken, it didn't matter how much magic he had. That's just it. I'm not sure there's enough life in the estate this time to do that. It's the fae, their wall, that's causing this, Christopher said, his gray eyes narrowing as he gazed towards the magical border. Everyone says that since it appeared that the land on our side has been drained of life. The fae are taking it all, using it for themselves. Finn slowly turned his head towards the wall, too. It was 5 miles away, but it couldn't be missed. The wall transected the lupine woods right down the middle. It appeared to be made of dark green glass, but it was not. It almost blended in with the forest's dark trees, but then it shot up past the treetops and disappeared into the sky above, seemingly without end. Those who had tried to dig beneath it had no luck either. It was infinite. Is it the wall, Finn? Miles's voice was high and tight. Is it foul fae magic that's destroying human land? Finn licked his lips. I don't know. I've never felt the wall draining life, but Christopher is right that every year since it went up, things have gotten worse here. But some say... He paused and licked his lips again. He should not talk about the other reason for why life might be drained away. What do some say, Finn? His stepfather asked quietly, which was a warning in and of itself. But Finn knew that to not answer was a mistake, so he had to say that the Fae's presence in Raythe in the past was the only thing that made this land habitable. Now that they're gone, the land is naturally returning to what it was before they came. Miles snickered. You would love that to be true, that the Fae aren't thieves, that they are more in tune with the land than humans, that the Fae King Thalanil had a good reason for killing our good King Alexander and Queen Cyril. But the truth is that he murdered them out of pique, and then he erected the wall, which is sucking all the life away. Finn gritted his teeth to stop himself from blurting out that no one knew what had caused the rift between Fae King Thalanil Ravenspar and the human rulers of the Raythe kingdom, King Alexander and Queen Cyril de Clare. But those three, 2 of them were dead, and the Fae King was beyond the wall and would not speak to any human. The wall should be destroyed! Miles Adams' apple bobbed frantically. The King's Guard tried. It cannot even be chipped, Christopher reminded his brother dryly. They've used battering rams, great swords, axes, fire, every weapon we have to no avail. I have even tested my most caustic potions on it, and it remains unmarred in any way. Finn's eyes scanned the wall. The Fae Empire that lay beyond it could be seen only as shadows and bursts of light. His father was somewhere behind the wall, just as inexplicable and unknowable to him as the hidden land. Finn wondered if his Fae father ever thought of him. Perhaps he did not even know of Finn's existence, as his mother might not have revealed her pregnancy, for fear he would come and take Finn away, as Fae had done to other half-bloods. So we can do nothing? Our lands are bound to be drained and die? Miles squawked. Everything and everyone has a weakness, his stepfather said, and his lips tightened. We'll find a way to destroy the wall and the Fae in time. Miles whipped around towards his father. But what are we going to do now? Tanglewood's fertility is what sets us apart from everyone else. It's why we have an edge in the marriage market. Christopher's lips pursed before he stated dryly, Father, if Finn cannot revive the land this year, then maybe some of my potions might. I've made headway in— No, Christopher. His stepfather's expression was pinched. Your gift with potions is impressive, but not necessary at this time. What Father isn't saying is that the only thing your potions have ever done is poison the neighborhood cats and dogs. Miles snipped at his older brother. Christopher stiffened and his eyes narrowed. I needed subjects for my experiments. Would you rather I have used you? Miles gave his brother a wary look. Old Jonathan died suddenly, didn't he? After you ran out of animals to test upon. He was old and a peasant. Christopher waved a hand through the air. They'd die from a brisk wind. He was hale and hearty. Nothing was wrong with him at all. It was a great shock and a terrible thing when he died, Finn contradicted, feeling a wave of rage well up at the name of the former coachman who had died the previous winter. Surely Christopher didn't harm him, did he? Finn thought. He kills innocent animals so easily, though, and he hardly ranks peasants above livestock in terms of worth. So he could have done it. The magic that limned Finn's hands glowed brighter, going from gold to red in an instant. His stepfather stirred uneasily. Finn drew in a deep breath to calm himself, and the pure golden glow was restored. Christopher swung those cold, gray eyes towards him. His stepbrother said nothing, but Finn knew that it would cost him later in some way. We've gotten rather far afield here, boys, his stepfather said after clearing his throat. Now, Finn, you must make Tanglewood bloom. You must do it, as you always have. It's the only reason we keep your secret, after all. Miles's lips flattened into a thin line for a moment. I mean, who wants a filthy half-blood under their roof? We risk King Rohan thinking we're the enemy, too. Finn flushed hotly, and the magic again that limned his hands reacted. This time it crackled menacingly. My loyalty is to King Rohan, just as yours is, Miles. Miles took a step back, blanching. Father, he's threatening me with his—
Enough! All of you.
His stepfather's brows bristled, and he regarded all three of them out of dark, angry eyes.
We are not here for this. We need Tanglewood to bloom.
Miles and Christopher looked down at their feet. Finn drew in deep breaths to steady himself once more. He flexed his fingers. When using Fey magic, he always had to keep his behavior as non-threatening and non-confrontational as possible, or there would be a lashing later. But he'd forgotten that lesson. His magic was behaving badly. I have a potential solution, Finn finally said into the tense silence.
A solution?
His stepfather laughed tightly.
Why didn't you say that before?
Because I know you won't like it, Finn thought sourly. But out loud he stated, it's something I haven't done before, and, well, anyway, perhaps if I drew some life from the land surrounding Tanglewood, there would be a better mix of life and magic. I could also help those estates too, and—
No!
His stepfather nearly shouted.
I mean, no, Finn. As to the sharing, the taking, well, if you need to take, you need to take. There isn't enough life in those estates for them to flourish anyway. Best to concentrate all the life in Tanglewood.
But that would be— Finn paused. The word he was about to say was stealing, but that would not go over well.
Our land has to look the best if we're going to attract the right kind of bride this season, Miles said, revealing the true reason for not wanting to help the other estates. Miles, his stepfather said reproachfully, we are good to our friends. But none of the people around here are our friends. They still look down upon us, even though you have a title now, father, Miles grumbled.
But the title does not pass down to us, little brother, Christopher reminded him with a scowl. It is only a title by marriage, not the same thing as blood nobility. Finn could see his stepfather's jaw clenching even under the full dark beard. This was a sore spot for him, even when pointed out by his sons. Finn, by rights, was the lord of Tanglewood Manor, but his name had been struck from all official documents. It was as if he did not exist. His stepfather had told him it was for his protection, but Finn knew it was to allow him to claim the title that he so coveted. If you marry very well, boys, your children will inherit wealth and titles beyond imagination. You must marry well, as I did, his stepfather said lightly, even though there was an angry light in his eyes. Now, Finn, do what you must to make Tanglewood bloom, but do not help anyone else. If you have to siphon life from the neighboring estates, do it, but do not share the reward with them, understood? But it might help our estate too, Finn said, if we fix what's wrong. Finn! His stepfather's voice was like a whip crack that had Finn's shoulders curving forward, as if he expected an actual blow. Do as you are told. The or else did not have to be said out loud. And that is the end of chapter 1 of Cinders Ashes book 1. I hope you enjoy it. I'm thrilled about this new book series, and I can't wait to share more of it with you. It is available for purchase on Amazon, and there will be an Audible version, not read by me, but by a very extraordinary actor who you should be hearing snippets from in the upcoming weeks, I hope. He's really, truly going to bring this book to life, this whole book series to life in a way that I cannot for sure, but I think is just going to add to your enjoyment of the story. Thank you so much.